Welcome to the Long Thread podcast about spinning, stitching, and weaving by hand. The podcast is presented by Long Thread Media, publishers of Spin-Off, Handwoven, Piecework, and Little Looms magazines. Find us online at longthreadmedia.com. Trinway Silks is where weavers, spinners, knitters, and stitchers find the silk they love. Select from the largest variety of silk spinning fibers, silk yarn, and silk threads and ribbons at trinwaysilks.com. You'll discover a rainbow of colors thoughtfully hand-dyed in Colorado. Love natural? Trinway's array of wild silks provide choices beyond white. If you love silk, you'll love Trinway Silks, where superior quality and customer service are guaranteed.
Hi, I'm Wendy, and I work at the Yarn Barn of Kansas. In addition to packing scores of mail order boxes every day, I'm a knitter and knitting teacher. In fact, all of us at Yarn Barn are knitters. We're just as addicted to yarn as you are, and we love making suggestions for that next sweater, scarf, or pair of socks. See what we've got at yarnbarn-ks.com.
I'm your host, Long Thread Media co-founder Ann Merrow. New York-based designer Sahara Briscoe works in media including spinning, weaving, hand and machine knitting, dyeing, and more than we could list. Her designs reflect her passions for circular, no-waste creation and the comfort of home. Sahara, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, well, thanks for the invitation. I was pretty sure. I was shocked. I was like, wow.
Well, yes, I feel the same way.
Yeah, I feel, because, a lot of times people will go to, if they have businesses or designers, they're going to events, they want to meet people, I just basically sit here and do my work and remember to post and, and I'm joined a few I'm a part of the Craft Industry Alliance and, get your publications. Oh, I saw your towels.
Oh my goodness.
Now I got something else. I'm like, my hands. I saw your towels. Because I get the magazine. I was like, oh, because I've been thinking, well, it's what I think about. I spent a lot of time thinking about, textiles in daily use. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I look in my closet and how every time someone goes somewhere, they're bringing you these tea towels back that look great. Mm-hmm. But they have the sizing on it. They can't absorb anything.
Yeah.
But you don't want to get rid of them because, they're nice. And
yeah.
But so finally I'm thinking you know what? No. Yeah. I want something that makes me happy when I do house chores.
That's true. You need to be happy when you do your house chores.
Yeah, and and for me, beautiful home textiles. Well, it's like us as women. Mm-hmm. Okay, we have to be durable. You think about what we do. We have to be durable. We have to perform a lot of tasks. Mm-hmm. And we have to hold up and still look good. Well, this is happening. You gotta look good while you're in the middle of a colander being. So it made me. I'm my whole design practice and and textile practice is about why can't the everyday look beautiful? Because that way you'll want to be in the kitchen or you want to do things because you've made the fabrics and you've made the items. So when I saw your cloth, I was like, oh wow. That's like having a friend in your house every day.
And if you give them as gifts, hopefully, I have folks in mind to give them to. But let's back up, Sahara, because I think often when I think of various people in the fiber arts, it's kind of lazy, but I think she is a blanker. She's a knitter. She's a da-da-da. And when I think about you, I could not think of just one word to put in that category. Do you think of yourself as being primarily a something-er, or do you look at it very differently?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I guess there isn't, because I don't think of myself as a textile artist. Because for me, I don't know, artists, responds to things that's happening in the world, things that's going on in themselves. My response is to objects because my background's in design. Mm-hmm. And I think when your background's in design, you learn a variety of skills to be able to have a vocabulary that can solve many clients' creative problems. Mm-hmm. So I never sat down to think about what I actually do. Let's see. So let's take work. Oh, let's push work over there.
Yeah.
And I'll say for my own projects, 90% of the time, it will be knitted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And 90% of the time, I'll be knitted. Part of the reason why I have a lot of skill sets is because I noticed at one point I did knit like all the time, but my hands were feeling it. And also I had a commission where I could either do a very intricate intarsia or I had to find another way of expressing what this client wanted because they were giving me photographs. And that's when I realized, sadly, that you can't knit everything.
So what did you do instead?
I started to teach myself embroidery, skills that I learned in the past that I didn't kind of pay attention to. I started to realize there's more than one way to make a picture or express something. You know, that's and to find methods that's that simple and to avoid judgmental craft groups and the subtle bullying that goes on when you're like putting an applique on a sweater around a group of people. Like you could have mended that differently. So,
and yet when we sat down, I noticed you pick up a spindle and a distaff. So
well, spinning is one of those things when you're good at it, you can just. It helps, like, you know, I guess I call it a fidget tool, a productive fidget tool. Because I was slightly nervous knowing that was going on, I was going on here. So the first thing I reach for is just, you can't mess this up. I reach for a spindle. But yeah, my design background kind of fueled this wide skill set because I quickly learned that I can't knit everything. So I started teaching, I started looking at assignments. Let's say if a client wanted like they wanted like a woven, they wanted a blanket, but most people don't know what they want. So they wave their hands in the air, like I have a concept. And then I'm going, and I want a blanket and I want this in it and that. And now instead of just knitting, because also with people knitting stretches, I had to think about, and I'm a trained weaver.
Okay.
So these skills came as outgrowths of necessity. Getting a job, I was offered a job in weaving and I took the course at Parsons came and I started to weave. And also my love of fabric. For years I worked in the garment district in knitwear development. And so I just found after a while it was menswear primarily and sweater development. And I just got tired of the back, front, and two sleeves. I was finding the fabric more interesting than what I was designing for people. And that's where I started to branch out and to learn different skills, figuring someday I'll use it.
Right.
And I've used them all consistently. So I think of myself honestly as a designer artisan.
Designer artisan. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I do want to get back to what your personal interests and passions are, but I'm curious, you were talking about, having a sort of a commission or working on designs with other people. And I've actually looked at your website and I am curious what sort of projects you work on with folks and how do they, if someone has a project that they approach you with, what is it that they're usually looking to do?
Okay. From my website, what I specialize in are blankets. Okay, and blankets that offer more than just bodily protection because warmth is a given. So it's like I use parts of cultural lessons and studies from other cultures, symbolism to create blankets. I get a lot of people come to me. Let's say they'll order a couch from a person who makes them, but they want a specialty textile. So that's the root of my design business, is specialty textiles. And so, it's an outgrowth of my job for 30 years as a sample maker. And so what happens is that I'll make I'll make sample fabrics for either companies or individuals, and they'll go, "Oh, okay, Reeves, I like this one. I would like to see this. Can you have this done in can we have this done in knit fabric, or we'd like a blanket like this," so that I make the fabric up. And then I look for the source. It's pretty similar in the garment district and designing clothing.
Except so much more open-ended. I mean, when you talked about you were doing knitwear specialization and front of back and 2 sleeves. And what you're talking about right now is I could pull from anything.
Yeah, it's a fabric. It's fabric. One of the issues we have too as personal knitters is that we only knit. We have to identify as something, even though I find amongst my friends, they're pretty multi-skilled. Some of it you do a little sewing, you do a little applique, you do a little quilting. But when you come to but market forces want you to identify as something so they can sell you something.
Oh, that's true.
And if you do, it sounds weird. It doesn't sound profitable if you do a little of this and a little of that.
Yeah, that's true. And now a word from our sponsors.
Have you heard of the Woolly Thistle? We're a brick and click yarn shop specializing in non-superwash woolly wool yarns from the UK and Europe. We have fast and free shipping, and you can check us out at thewoollythistle.com, 2 L's in woolly, and let us do the international shipping and tariffs so you don't have to.
Peace Fleece began in a small Maine town with a mission to produce a yarn that brings together parties from areas of historic conflict, transcending boundaries through the commerce of wool. From Russian farmers to the Navajo Nation, the original owners set the foundation for meaningful trade. Today, the spinning mill at Harrisville Designs continues the tradition of sourcing fine wool from Navajo farmers, combining it with U.S. wool and a touch of mohair to create the unique Peace Fleece blend. Visit our website at peacefleece.com to learn more. And now back to the show. Well, that's interesting. I was looking at it from, what do you do being your sort of market force? But yeah, it's true that it's when people think about what's my target market, isn't it funny to think of yourself as a target market?
It is, yeah. It is for me because my specialty is, I design and make specialty fabrics. And that's just simply because I just love what all these techniques can produce. The last one had been rug hooking with yarn. And there were instructors. I learned, one of the other things that led me to start to change what I was, to learn more skills is that it just uses up more of your supplies. From each project that I was doing a blanket, I'm left with you're left with fabric or yarn. I try to be as close as possible to non-waste. Just economically to keep within the client's budget because I work under, budget constrictions. But you're still left with stuff, with yarn and fabric. So I just wanted to figure out different ways of using it, and most of the yarn, and then that's when the silos come in because I like embroidery. And this studio and my life pretty much runs, my textile life, because this is my passion, works under 2 phrases, and that's what if and why not?
Why not?
That's how I look at everything. What if and why
Mm-hmm.
not? One of my favorite textile blogs, they're no longer in existence, back in the day used to be called And Then We Set It on Fire.
Oh my.
and it was mind-blowing because they tried everything,
Mm-hmm.
And after that, my attitude towards yarn, I stopped looking at it all as sacred. I would get acrylic yarn, I would make a knit fabric, and then I'd deliberately smash it with a hot iron just to see it change and just become like really drapey. And because from a sewing background, I started out with fabric. Okay, and that's what I went to high school, the fashion industries, and then I went through the pipeline. So you're always dealing with fabric.
Right.
And yardage, and you're cutting things out. And so that's informed my background. When I got to knitting, I got a job at School Products, and I saw the knitting machines. And I said, this was maybe in the 80s, and I said, oh, I'm going to get fired. But I just looked at the machine. I mean, I was hand knitting, and crocheting. I thought machines were like, in school, they were in the industrial part. It was a separate major. So I was like, ooh, then they look complicated. But I had a good instructor. I learned to make my first sweater in a week. And I was like, wow. This was machine knitting.
This is hand knitting or machine knitting?
Machine
Hand knitting?
And I was
machine
just kind of
knitting.
like, wow.
Yeah.
All I need is yarn, some math, and a swatch. And this is it, as opposed to woven fabrics, which you had to get a dress form. You're buying fabric, muslin, dress form. Fashion design is expensive. Whereas knitting, well, was just kind of, it was so impressive. So that led to me having my whole career turning around into knitwear. But, when I started out machine knitting, but then with hand knitting skills, I said, why can't we combine? Like, why does everyone want to do one thing?
Yeah.
And then they attach status to it. So when I wanted to, or in fashion design, it's trendy. Like I wanted to embroider on the knit. Oh, nobody's doing that right now. Well, why not?
Why not?
So,
like you needed to wait for permission or somebody else to do it first before you could allow it join in?
There's a whole trend that everyone follows and all that the stores and all would do. And so I just saw myself just like loving fabric more and more. And the principle of hand knitting is that it's one of the few things you can make the garment and you can make the fabric and the garment at the same time. There aren't many skills you can do that. You can't do that with sewing. Weaving, you can weave garments but to do the shaping and all will now, change it. It becomes time consuming. And then how much waste do you have in the warps? Whereas knitting, you can, and crochet also, crochet is sculptural because you can crochet up, and sideways. And so knitting suddenly, and with the machine, hand knitting for me changed. It became more sculptural, color work and all, because machines are just, flatbed machines were very linear.
Right.
So I started looking at knit fabric as a ground cloth. And then I started embroidering on it and everything else now. And that's carried me up to now with this studio that I'm in.
Yeah.
And my work now products that I make and sell comes out of my love of all of these techniques that I've taught myself and learned. And because now I have nobody telling me what I can't do. And I try to tell this to, people and friends of mine who knit and a lot of beginning knitters, they're on YouTube, they're all looking at this stuff. I'm like, you can't look at it like fashion. I'm like, don't look at knitting like fashion. No one ever comes up to you. And when's the last time has anyone come up to you and said, no one knits that anymore?
That's very interesting because, sometimes I think being in more the magazines and websites that I'm probably a little bit perpetuating that. We look at trends and trend reports and what color is in, and you're just kind of like being led by your own passions and interests.
Yeah, and I do. Like I pay attention to the trends, especially color trends, because there's usually more than one. It's like there's color families, like let's say, it'll be autumn desert and then metallica and something else. So I look at them all, but I just choose the colors that I want to use out of it. I don't just suddenly go, oh, okay, I'm going to dye this, I'm going to dye that. I just try and pick out, what the colors that I like out of it and use. And it's the thing that I don't, I try not to do is to go down like skill rabbit holes. Okay. Like I got a cord maker. I broke down and I got a cord maker from Cato. And when people ask me, if I have any employees for my business, I have two, one named Cricket and the other is named Cato.
So just for folks who aren't familiar, Cricket is a vegetable loom.
Yeah, Cricket. Oh, sorry. Cricket is I guess it would be my Cricket maker, which is my plotting and cutting machine.
Okay.
And that does a lot of cutting for me, and it does a lot of drawing that I, can't do. And Cato is the company that makes that has my electric cord maker.
It's an electric cord maker.
Yes, it's wonderful. It's powered. It has it's a plug-in with a USB port, and it has like 4 prongs, like it's a mini knitting machine. And you put the yarn through it, and you turn it to start. Then you press the button, and it just makes all of this. It just makes cord.
I've been playing around with one of the ones that you can.
A hand
cord maker.
Yeah,
I'm not good at it yet, but still, yeah.
Yeah, I have a hand one as well. I call it the Fiber Artist Fidget Tool.
Yeah. Well, I'm not good
Because
enough for it to be a fidget tool yet. Mostly it's a swearing tool.
is it a little handhold that you wind the yarn around and pull?
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes a minute to start and a minute to kind of hold it so that it'll work for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if the latches aren't moving, drop a little oil on them.
Oh,
and that loosens them up so that you're not constantly like bending your wrist.
yeah.
But I have that, and then I have the embellished knits that I make cord from.
Mm-hmm.
But while everyone else is writing words, because that's the trend, I've been stitching them together to make trivets
Oh.
that you can put mugs on.
Mm-hmm.
I knit with them. If you use a very light yarn, it's the ultimate bulky yarn.
You're making your own chainette.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something to think about, which when you have a lot of lace weight lying around that you can't do anything with,
right,
you can, make cord out of it. And now you have this bulky lace weight, bulky yarn, mohair yarn. And that's been lately, that's been the crux of what I want to do in the future. I want to design kits. But what I would like to do is to design kits that are multi-skilled kits. Kits where you can knit and sew and utilize the skills that you have so you don't feel like you have to buy something for each hobby that you're working
I see what
with.
You're saying.
I have a sweater now that somewhere here that I looked at my yarn stash about 3 months ago, and it's not visible here where I'm sitting, but I realized that I'd have to live to about 125 years old to use it all up. I started to cry. I was like, oh God, we always talk about sustainability and circularity as we're just buying more and more and more and more stuff. And then you see what you accumulated, and it's like, oh God. And then you get this weird emotional state because now you have a hard time going in the yarn store because that little angel on your shoulder is going, buy it, buy it, buy it, buy it. So, but you're like, you say, I'm not buying any yarn, but you don't make anything with the yarn you have. So in essence, you don't have anything. So I started to think about how can we recycle yarn that we have without descending into chaos, because most of us use so many, we follow the designer, the yarn company, the pattern, and I happen to have a sweater that's made with about 6 different colors because they all came from projects and stuff, and I didn't know how much yarn I'd have. So I just did some math, and I have a wonderful app called Stashbot.
Okay.
Stashbot is fantastic. They list every garment and accessory you can make, from socks to blankets. And it's a sliding app. You slide over to what you're making. You slide over to the gauge of either your ball of yarn or the swatch you've made. And then you line that up and it will tell you the yardage
that you
need to, yes, that you need. Because a lot of us don't think in terms of yardage. We think in terms of, it was still, it's 8 balls to do this. Oh my God, this is only like 5 balls. But if it's only 97 yards per ball, it's not going to, it's only going to be up to here. So I've been telling, especially students I have, to think in terms of yardage. And so now, if it's 1,100 yards, let's say, to make this, and it's $5.99 a ball, and each ball gives you, 147 yards, you can now calculate like how many balls you'd need and the price. And that would tell you, how much you spend. And I tell my students, since you don't go out of style, I think like a designer. I said, when you go to clothes stores to buy clothing, you can literally, pay for it and then walk out the store with it, get dressed and go out. When you're creating something, it takes a while. So this is why my knitting and crochet friends laugh at me when they see me working on, a bulky sweater in June.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I have air conditioning, or I'm knitting a tank top in February. And they were all like, speeding up to try and finish what they're doing, and I'm just doing along because my mantra personally is as long as you finish within the season that you want to wear it, you will always be in style because you made it and they didn't. And when you think about it that way, you're not running around with this sense of guilt when you go to the group and everyone's showing off what they made, and I'm still on that sleeve.
Yeah.
But don't worry if it's spring. Winter's coming, then you'll have that sweater on.
Yeah.
The Rhinebeck thing has been. I've watched it evolve from just people being out, on the hill and flexing their sweaters and all, to like now to, oh, I gotta get my Rhinebeck sweater together because so and so designer is gonna be there and da da da. And the last time I went to Rhinebeck the year before last, and I saw big groups of knitters, and everyone looked like they were in a large family photo.
Because they looked so similar?
Yeah. Whereas, I remember a time when, I'm saying this because I'm older. I remember a time when, there were patterns and all out, but you still had enough room, I guess, to pick your own yarns, or it wasn't looked at as a lifestyle and fashion. You didn't worry about, you could go out with friends with a sweater 5 years old on. You didn't have that to worry about, like, whose sweater it was. So coming out of a fashion background into these crafts and then hanging out with people who, it's like they're all watching a TV show that I haven't picked up on. Oh, so this person's coming out with that, and this person's coming out. And I'm just sitting there like, oh, man. Because I feel like I can't keep up.
I do feel like for me, because I can be very prone to distraction of all kinds, that maybe I'm not making a particular pattern, but having that Rhinebeck sweater phenomenon means I know I want to be knitting, but also helps to focus me on, okay, I know where I'm headed with this.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Exactly. I'm not some people are process people. I like to see the end result. And I remember going to Rhinebeck once when everyone was really working on their sweaters, and it happened to be a fluke that year, and it was like 80 degrees.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I just showed up with a T-shirt on, a large wrap. But it was amazing how many people were determined to wear their sweater, even if it was 80 degrees. And that's when I realized that, I can't get focused on events the way you were buying clothes, a gown for a gala.
Right.
I can't knit, or crochet or even weave or do any of these crafts this way. And I think that's where my focus has now changed to home, because you don't get tired of your pillows. And I'm watching the vibes shift now. A lot of indies are saying that, they're not doing as good business. There's tariffs. There's people, everyone's in this kind of a state of craft fusion, or confusion about where to go next and what to do. And I'm saying, well, let's look at our houses.
Yeah. I
have a gorgeous dish towel that I just finished that was on Insta, and when I went to work on it, people, you knit your dish towels? Like I post got offended. And I was like, well, why not?
I was in a store not too long ago, and they had the most beautiful, very fine gauge knitted dish towels. And I thought to myself, I could make that, but it never occurred to me to want to before.
Yeah, where I think, the history of knitting, its place in time, its place in the world, the only time we've have come out of sweaters, scarves, and garments is maybe during World War II when we had to knit, when women were knitting bandages for the soldiers.
Right.
But I think we're entering a time now where we're going to have to look at sustainability. I would like for us to look at sustainability on a more personal level. In other words, it's your own damn stash, and finding out ways to, like all this cotton we'll have. It's okay to knit dishcloth. I live in a pre-war building. that's unceremoniously celebrated its 100th birthday a year or so ago. And I don't have a dishwasher, so I wash my dishes by hand. And it's like, why can't when I go to wash dishes, I don't want to keep buying discount dishcloths that are falling apart, and not for nothing, folks, probably supporting an economy of abuse because they can sell for that cheap. People are still sewing the edges, and how is all this getting done and winding up in landfills? So rather than, I can proudly say that the dishcloths that I've made, I haven't had to mend, and they last for at least 5 years.
You mentioned that you live in a pre-war building, and I realized that your Instagram handle it's about the Bronx. What's your Instagram handle?
It's Bronx Champion.
Bronx
That's
Champion.
my name, but I'm Bronx Champion.
So you mentioned going to Rhinebeck, but you are crafting in a space that I'm guessing is not huge, that has a lot of liveliness around it. What do you find that being a crafter in the city is different from a lot of what a lot of folks expect? Like, you have a loom in a New York apartment.
Oh, we're here. We're definitely here. The craft industry, I would say, has become a lot more amenable to people in apartments, because the loom that I have is a it's a rigid heddle loom. And when I first started weaving, and I got a little beaker rigid heddle loom, and the weavers around me, I was part of a weaving group that said, that's not a real loom. And so I did wind up getting a small, like a 22-inch Harrisville. It's in the hallway, a folding loom. And when you live in the city, you have to think of, in smaller apartments, you have to think of ways that you can store, what you have, but still be accessible to it. This is it's a 2-bedroom apartment, and this would have been the child's bedroom.
Okay.
And it's fairly large, but I have to stay very organized because it's not a studio where I can just kind of like spread out. And so it's pretty contained. But I found like friends of mine who live out west and all, and they, have houses and basements, and they can have 45-inch looms and all. And, that was my dream at one time, was I'm going to weave my own Chanel suit. And no, having a small space has taught me that I don't have to work small. I got an artist commission, where I had to make 6 large knitted hexagonal panels to support a dance group. And the largest panel was 8 feet, and they all had to be assembled, and I assembled it in my living room. And that's when I realized that I do actually have a fairly large apartment that I live in, because it's old, and space wasn't such a premium as it is now. Working in the city, must say that everyone I've dealt with, suppliers, wheels and all, they all fold, and they're all portable, which allows me to go outside. I'm not confined in working here, when I can see where apartments can be confining. There are public spaces in the city where you can go and craft. In the Bronx, I'm fortunate to live across the street from Bronx Park, so in spring and summer, I have to work outside.
Yeah.
Because I hear the children playing, the music's playing, you hear the grill smell from the barbecue, and then I feel like I'm sitting in my own personal sweatshop. Like, how can I talk about labor rights if I'm working myself to death in a little sweatshop, and it's hot and the weather's hot, and I'm like, why can't I work outside?
Yeah, that's true.
And so I take my wheel. I have a folding wheel, a little away folding wheel that I also found was small enough for me to take and put on the fire escape.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So on days when I want to be outside, but I don't feel very educational, because people ask questions and all.
Yeah.
Then I take my little wheel, and I have a tiny chair, and I can sit on the fire escape, and I can literally spin on the fire escape, because most people don't look up when they're walking down the street. If they do look up, I'm like, hi, and they go, that's the crazy spinning lady.
That's crazy. So you mentioned people ask you questions. When you are teaching students, what sort of, are you working one-on-one, or are you teaching a specific class, or are you teaching more about your approach?
Wow. Well, see, when I taught 2 semesters at Parsons School of Design, and that was pretty amazing because crafts like spinning and even knitting and all have generally been crafts that are domestically handed down by one-on-one. But in the course I was asked to be an adjunct at, I taught 32 people in 2 sessions
Wow.
of various majors how to spin yarn. And it was quite a thing to do because I had to figure out how that would happen. But what I did was I made everybody have their own kit, which they had a pack of fleece. The instructor provided spindles for everyone. Some people had CD spindles and some people had shack spindles. And then what I basically did was demonstrate what could happen. And once I got everyone like wowed and told them that you're going to do this, you're not going to mess up anything, you will do this. And then I just went around and just started showing people, and it worked out. When I'm outside, I don't get students so much, is that I get the familiarity. I live in a neighborhood where the library supports 8 languages.
Wow.
And people come from about 4 continents. So there's people from Eastern Europe, there's Middle Eastern people from Eastern Europe, South Indians, Mexicans, people from the Caribbean. And I find that particularly in Europe and South Asia, everyone's familiar with spinning of some sort. So me sitting outside, as I just get smiles, kids walk by, and that's grandma, do that. And, I had a group of like elderly Russian women walk by once, and they were smiling. And then one of them turned around and secretly pulled out this beautifully ornate hand-painted spindle.
Oh.
And which immediately caused me to mess up because I was like, oh, wow. And she was like, it's good, but you do good.
Wow.
And everyone's familiar with it. High school kids who walk by and go, oh, Rumpelstiltskin.
Well, not wrong.
I'm like, I'm glad you learned that in school. I'm glad you remember that, And so it's really pleasant spinning outdoors because people understand what I'm doing. They'll stop and chat with me for a minute about it. And mostly like, where can they get the materials here? Because from where everyone came from, it's not so much that they don't want to do the craft. It's just you've been taught that you don't come to America to spin yarn.
Yeah.
But you miss what you've done. And so sometimes when you come, you can't, what do you do when you can't take the loom with you?
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those things where, you move to a new place, and what do you have to figure? You have to figure out where the grocery store is. You have to figure out where the doctor's office is. And so the things that, making fabric and feeding your soul are maybe a little bit farther down the list of, how do I get used to this place?
Exactly. And so, I've given embroidery thread here to a number of Pakistani women. Like when I get yarn and fiber and all left over from projects now, folks know that, I'll come over and distribute some to them. So it's a neighborhood circularity in itself that's really cool.
Yeah, that is wonderful. So you mentioned that you are kind of a product knitter, and yet you've also mentioned that you use all of these different, methods and techniques and skills. And do you have a particular project in mind when you sit down to work on something, or do you go through different iterations and see what it becomes?
Well, if I have a particular project in mind, my first thought is, what is it for? And what does it do? And if and for my own projects, and this is where, because my work projects and my own projects blend.
Right.
So I'll say to myself, wow, I need a doormat for the front door. And then the project starts the use informs the textile for me. Okay, it needs to be durable because it's a front doormat. It needs to be something that I can wash easy, and it needs to be durable. And how much do I want to spend in case anyone else I know wants to make one. That thought occurs to me,
Yeah.
and I do strongly believe that economics should not stand in the way of anyone being able to create something that's pleasurable for them. And so for my own doormat, I went to the dollar store and I got a shelf liner. Because if it has, when you have a vocabulary of different techniques, in rug hooking, you take a hook and you pull yarn or fabric through a piece of cloth. Well, with a shelf liner, the holes are already there.
Yeah.
And so I look at everything in the world, in the material world, in terms of not what it's for, so much as what does it do? And that became the ground cloth. That became the backing, because now it's rubber, it's sturdy. And so I started taking crochet hooks and started crocheting through it and pulling fiber through it. And then I came to the idea of making a hooked rug. And once that's established, then the art comes. Then I go to my stash and I start pulling out colors and, what do I want and for it to look like? And then it starts to evolve, especially when I'm using just work colors out of my stash, because I can't start getting designy and thinking it all has to be a certain way. It all has to look a certain way. Is it the same size? If it could go through the hole, I used it. And then the textiles will speak to me. It's been very liberating to start to work that way. One of my trivets, which is all yarn, is a casserole trivet.
And that's a hooked rug or a punch needle technique?
This is hooked. Yeah, this is hand. This is all. It's all. My work is hand hooked because I like to see where I'm working with.
Sure.
And also punch needles to a degree are limited in the type of yarn that they can use. And so I use a lot of my hand spun because, once it's spun, it's yarn.
Right.
It goes in the stash, and now that I'm on step 12 of, the Sahara Briscoe 12 step, I have too much yarn, not anonymous. Finding more ways to use yarn has just been the crux of my life, because once again, we're siloed. If you're embroidering, you can only use embroidery thread. If you're knitting, then if you're a hand spinner, and hand spinners particularly, I find, have this issue. They just spin for one thing, or they just spin.
Yes.
And one day I was with some friends and we were at a small fair and it started to rain and we wanted to put up a tent. And, we were like, wow, how do we put this up? Where do we get the string? And this guy came around. He said, well, all of you spin.
Yep.
And we kind of looked at each other like,
oh.
Yeah, collective light bulb over our heads came on. And I said, well, why not spin my own yarn for embroidery? It helps you go further. You can there's maybe something you want to embroider that you can't find the color or texture, or for. So why not? And that's where sampling is fun. I swatch when I don't have anything to make.
Oh, yeah. I forget who I was talking to, but they pointed out that, we think of people in the past as having this huge set of skills, but a lot of people only, would have only spun for one thing. And how challenging it is. You think, I could spin my embroidery floss. I could spin, this other stuff. I could knit something fine. I could knit something. So being able to do this whole variety of things, but also having to decide which of them you're going to do is, kind of its own opportunity / challenge.
Yes. And definitely because, when you look at the history of all these skill sets in the domestic realm, you would spin one thing because that's what the village needed. Or, when it's out of necessity itself limits the possibilities because this is what we're using. This is what works. Why do something else? And, being a girl, like how much time you have to daydream. Although one of the things that we have discovered is that when we do work with our hands and it quiets your mind, and you have the muscle memory, you can allow your mind to just wander. And I'm sure a lot of new methods and ways of doing things, and the what ifs probably have came while we were working, because we wanted an easier way to do what would be considered a chore. But this chore is giving me pleasure, and and considering that, in the past when we didn't have as many ways to verbally express ourselves, it came out through the cloth and through the long thread.
Yeah, there you go.
That thread spans the globe. That thread spans the globe, and we all attach our cultures and our thoughts and minds and hearts to that thread. And that's why I tell people time isn't linear for me. It wasn't this person invented this and this person invented that. That's wanting credit. It's all of us solving the similar problems in the way that works for us. When the carpet trade went to the wealthy, we rug hooked our wool clothing. It didn't stop us. You acquired and so now when I see everyone getting tired because they have all these scarves and all these sweaters and all these hats and all this stash, but they don't know what to do next, or my money's not good right now. I have a lot of bills. What do I do? And I said, well, now I have to do more with yarn. I found out, I used to think that rug hooking was only for fabric. So, I'm not, this genius. I came from the same background. I thought it was only for fabric. But I took a rug hooking class because I'm a book fiend. And I have a huge textile library that's over there. And Judy Taylor, who started out, her first books was, hooking with yarn.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, I can do that. And it makes you feel like, I discovered a secret I can't tell anybody. And I bought the book and started going like, oh. And then you get excited and you go out to the group. And there was a rug hooking group happening in New York, because in the city there are a number of craft groups here. But once again, I pulled out my yarn and someone handed me some fabric. I said no. But then I delved into history and found out that rug hooking was originally developed by weavers. Because they had to do something with which comes out to maybe like close to, at least 12 inches of yarn on each end of your warp.
Yeah.
Which is waste.
Right.
You didn't throw anything away.
Especially if it was also hand spun.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And that just opened up a whole new world for me in terms of like what I could do. So, and I looked now at all those crochet hooks that I had up there, and I didn't think of giving them away anymore. And then I started hooking everything. I hooked through knit fabric. Why not, instead of trying to figure out with your fingers how to knit the fringe, just go grab some yarn and just pull the fringe through just knot the fringe through your sweater.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've talked about how you, approach designing from a blank slate. Do you ever use patterns, or do you always develop things on your own?
I primarily have developed things on my own. I think I've only maybe used about 2 or 3 patterns from other people. But that's simply because a woman, Chenille Designs, developed a system. Susan Lazier was the first person to develop a system that connected electronic knitting machines with home computers. And it was called Chenille Designs. And you could it was size inclusive. It was everything inclusive. It was an amazing program. And you could design on your home computer and transfer it to your knitting machine, or you could design on it was on a Brother electronic machine. And it was also, could be used for sewing as well. And I've just stuck with it for just 30 some odd years. It produces patterns without words. It's just the numbers. So you see the numbers to cast on, and then you see how many inches you are, and you see the numbers on the machine or for hand knitting. It was so inclusive and complete that I just saw no use in doing anything. It also allowed me to use yarns that I have. I just come from a background of poor working class background, and those neural pathways were drilled into my head to use what you have.
Yeah.
Then you'll have money to buy more. Use what you have. That's just been it. So while there are a lot of indie designers and knitwear designers whose work I admire, I just tend to work on my own things.
So are you saying that you're using this program to design hand knits as well as machine knits?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, because
Wow.
Cochineal Designs does not have a way of just charting in terms of words.
Mm-hmm.
You're just basically you're just making a swatch, and then you're building the garment or piece of knitting that you want, because you can make shapes as well as it was really high tech back then. You could make shapes as well as sleeves, collars. She has a number of also clothing pieces you can buy. So you're basically building the garment based on your swatch. And there's a yarn calculator in there. So based on your swatch, you can calculate how much yarn you'll need. And all this is based around a swatch. And it's a fantastic program to use. She's gone into another iteration of it that's been slightly buggy, and she's moved more towards sewing. But I don't mind, because I know it well enough that it works for me. I think the thing that has been inhibiting me with a lot of indie designers and patterns, it's the relationship now between the yarn, the pattern, and, there are patterns that I have used patterns in the past, but I've used my own yarn.
Mm-hmm.
I look at it in terms of wraps per inch, weight, and yardage.
Mm-hmm.
And that frees me from not being able to afford to knit a particular garment. And I think if knitters and crocheters and weavers and all expand their minds to stop thinking in terms of you need 8 balls of so-and-so's yarn to do this. And I look at knitwear designers who include yardage.
Mm-hmm.
It's very freeing, because if the yarn gives you 11 wraps per inch and you need 1,200 yards, now you're free to use a variety of yarns, as opposed to being attached to one person, where the sweaters are now costing you $250. It was shocking. I remember in the 80s when I just started knitting, to pay, $200 that was like Annie Black magazine, when the whole sweater was Angora.
Yes. I was just thinking that. I don't know what happened. I used to have a ball of that. I don't think I ever used it. But
I have a wall that I've squirreled away.
Yeah. But part of what you're talking about is being able to, is assembling skills. When I think about design from a commercial perspective, or, designing sweaters that are from a garment perspective, things like fit and assembly and how things go together and how arm size are shaped. That is the kind of knowledge that is ingrained in you that other people might find a little scary. Like I make drop sleeve sweaters because I don't want to worry about the size.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that's fine. Because and this is where I kind of differ. Because I also write custom patterns for people using my cochineal design, and my attitude is like, what you wear is a reflection of how you feel, and if you're making something, you should feel good in it. You should feel good in it, and if you don't want to, like, why should we have to worry about size and fit? And it's like you're thinking that it's like you're going to run into the designer of this sweater on the street, and they're going to go, "That's what you did," which social media for me has turned everything into a giant schoolyard. That everybody can just say everything, and talk about someone's pattern or someone's. And I think we should feel good about what we're in and what we're making, and what we're wearing.
So how are people finding you for these sorts of, I'm thinking about collaborations, anything from, hiring you to make a custom textile to asking you to make a sweater pattern. How are you making these connections with folks? Is it mostly a personal, almost a social craft world, or are you?
Yeah, it's been a lot of loyalty, repeat business for me, which is really which I find as relationship. I'm a member of an interior design organization, and then you meet people who are, who share your focus. The majority are repeat clients. I do have products that I do sell, and I'm going back to in-person selling last year, because I find that when I connect with people in person,
right,
it's so much better. And I also enjoy the feedback that I get as well. Nitty City, which is New York, which is, my number one yarn shop.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't want to offend anyone. There's a lot of great stores here, but, I've gotten a lot of recommendations through them, and a lot of repeat business. What I enjoy doing also, which gives me a lot of joy, is teaching. Because for me, I feel like we all have these skill sets, even if they're on the level that we've just tried a little something once. It's the mindset towards it that has to change. Because once you've learned, you have the skill set and the ability to do it. So you may be working on a sweater or a garment or even a pillow or something, and going, I'd like to embroider this part. But then right away, oh, no, I don't have embroidery yarn. But you have a bunch of yarn.
Or I don't know what the pattern should be, or I don't know. Yeah.
Right. It's going to be okay. And so I say, like artists like to get notebooks and doodle. Why don't we get swatches and doodle on them? What do you do with the gauge swatch after after you made it?
Did you make a gauge swatch?
Ooh, you should, folks. And 4 inches tells you nothing. Let's get beyond 4 inches. I make swatches about 6 by 6 to 8 by 8. If it's going to be something that I may experiment with, I'll paint on it. I've taken textile markers when I didn't feel too lazy to do a fair isle, and I'll sit there and if I paint it in, who's going to know it? And all of my swatches. So, but I've been wanting to ask people, what do you do with the leftover swatches? I used to lie to myself and say, I'm going to make this big quilt. All my swatches. I threw them all in the washing machine and felted everything.
On purpose?
Yes, I got disgusted one day. Well, I have a drawer where I keep all these swatches and fabric samples, and I opened it one day and it exploded. And I said, okay, well, let's be sustainable here, but what am I going to do with all this? I'm not sewing them together. I couldn't make sense of any of it. I got upset. I took it all downstairs and I dumped the whole thing into the washing machine on hot water. And I said, I will live with whatever I get. And what came out is, some things felted really well. And I said, oh, wow, what if I cut this and it's the what if.
Right.
And I think we should give ourselves not so much permission, but let's guide ourselves by what if. Because after all, what can happen if you do nothing. They'll sit there.
You'll get another drawer that explodes.
Right.
Yeah.
And let's get rid of the guilt. We're not going to stop buying yarn. Let's say that out loud.
Right.
But if we use up what we have, and I've been doing that, I got the scrappy craze.
Oh, yes.
And I started a crochet blanket that I have on my Instagram. And at first it was fun. Like, I'm just using these bits that I hate. But as it got bigger, I started that an emotional reaction came from it that I also get from rug hooking, because I buy a lot of yarn and fiber from independent makers and spin it and all. And it was like, do I call my friend Scrap? Because, now I'm crocheting with this and it's bits that are left. But like, this isn't just like yarn I accumulated from patterns and all that I've knit. These are people I know. Like I put through their yarn, and I feel like their personality has been transmuted through the fiber that I spun.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because it was art fiber, and it's now yarn, and I'm like, this is Gloria. I can't call her Scrap. Like, I know her.
I wonder if it's an interesting conversation that all these folks are having in your project.
It's evoking memories of spinning and when I got it from her. And then the other thing is, as it gets bigger, what is Scrap? because now I'm looking at balls of yarn that I have. It's a corner crochet. So as the blocks get bigger, now I'm finding I don't have lengths and little balls of yarn. Now I had to look at my stash. So now it becomes, who becomes scrap?
Huh.
And it's like, oh, I can't use her. I don't use that. And I may use this again. And I'm like, why are all these emotions going for me? Because in design, you have parameters that are set. So I don't have the expansion of feeling. Like, okay, I need 4 shades of green to do this with. These will work. Whereas now that I'm intimately involved in making this blanket that has hundreds of colors and all in it, and it's a scrap blanket, it's like, no, I can't call my friends scraps.
Accents. Can you call them highlights?
They're highlights, they're accents, they're feelings I have for them. Oh, I miss you. So it automatically is telling me when I go to buy yarn and fiber again who I'm going back to. I think that's the kind of relationships that keep us on the long thread.
Yeah. Well, and you were speaking about how if you're making something to wear, that it should always make you feel good. A lot of the things you're talking about making, making something with your friends or having creative ideas, that home is such a powerful place. And so making something of yourself to put in there, to live with every day is it can be very emotional. It can be very thought-provoking.
Yes, and as we work to have, the whole wellness space is just blown up, but it's all still being very monetized. You have to spend money to feel better. Whereas, the things that I want to design and pretty much offering the patterns, I'm thinking of having a whole thing about pricing with design and pattern, because since it's your stash and I'm using basic things, I'll probably just put patterns, up basically for free with color suggestions and just go from there. If in terms of monetization, you'd be wanting to take a class or something from me or do something more formal. But for me to just put things out there and run my mouth, you have the stats, you have everything. But home is powerful. And I think one can only have but so many scarves and sweaters. But pillows, small blankets, balls of yarn you can just fidget with.
Yes.
Why buy balls of yarn you can fidget with? And so, and the thing you use every day. If they're there's nothing wrong with making dish towels, folks. Dish towels. If you have that, some cotton lying around and you just learned a little class on double knitting. How about, some sleep masks?
Yeah.
You can, you can create your own wellness.
It's interesting to juxtapose that with the fact that you're doing this as a profession. And so in one way, you are supporting yourself through your textile work, and yet you're also giving of your textile work, because I think sometimes there's this idea that how will there be enough money, enough work, etc., if I need to support myself doing this? So to then be able to find it within yourself to also kind of give that away.
Yeah. How I look at it historically, I didn't invent I design, and create, but I didn't invent the skill sets. I didn't invent the crafts, and I didn't invent the techniques. So in terms of having a craft business, okay, that part, yes, I do have to think about making a living from it. And so the products I make, like the trivets and those products and all, there are people who are not going to make anything. I know we want the whole world to make, but there are quite a few people out there that are quite happy to buy blankets and all. What they want, however, are pieces that have a human connection to them, that is not one that's been exploited. And so those are products that they're worth pay, that they will pay for, even if they are expensive, because there's a human connection to that. And I will boast to say that in the products that I make, the human connection extends not only to what you're buying from me, but I also offer a right to repair. And I have my own cleaning service for blankets as well. See, I made it and I test everything. I'm down there in the laundry where designers appear to tread. And I wash the fabrics and I wash things because, I'm abusive. So I'm especially with household goods. So, I'm going to spill soup on this. So I feel like, why should our friendship end because you spilled a glass of wine on my trivet? So I make things that people can reuse and that are durable, or I will clean up. You can send it back to me and I'll clean it. And it's those kind of, that kind of attitude that gives me the living, because people who are willing to buy things that they know that they're not going to be just stuck within the closet. And what do I have the fear? Well, how am I going to do with this? And it's expensive. I don't want to mess it up. And so it's the business part of relationships, is that you're not only offering quality to people, but there's a human connection in helping them, maintain the quality, and then they come back. Or if, like the trivets are buy it once. So, but what happens is that you'll buy yours, but then if there's a home category for me, it's the gifts category.
Yeah.
Folks will buy it for someone. They want to see someone else have it. And it's strange because with this, I work with all, this is like friends, family, stash, hand spun, and it's 100 one of a kinds. So people have met up that have bought trivets from me, and they're like, "Oh, I know you. You make this? Oh, yeah, I want one for her too." And so now I'm thinking about having a dinner party and telling everybody, "Bring your trivets." And they're cool. Yeah, they're all. It's called the cousins trivets because you're all related to me, and you're related to. And that's the relationship that I put forward. That's really helped me in terms of artist commissions, commission work from artists, and also all of my customers and all have helped me because it takes me out of my comfort zone. If someone tells me that they want some bath scrubs for their spa, and I'm listening to it and like, okay, how can this happen? And why can I? And whereas a lot of us only make one thing because we haven't thought. Or we need permission. We I know people folks who are great weavers, but they keep weaving scarves. And I'm like, well, why don't you weave a pillow? But also objects of use get worn, and they're scared that they don't want to make something so beautiful it's going to wear out. But then you can make more. I spin because the first thing spinning taught me, I'll never run out of yarn.
Never run out of yarn. I met somebody, she's a weaver, and she had a sort of a studio. It was her capstone project for her senior project. And she wove a bunch of dish towels, and they were for sale. And I think they were like $35 if you'd use them, and $100 if you weren't going to use it.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
That is brilliant. I gotta remember that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. No, it's and we make things for use that are durable. We're not living back a time 200 years ago where the materials could easily be, could easily fall apart and all. I use linen as a ground cloth for things because, I feel like if you can wrap mummies in it for 5,000 years, you should surely get about 20 years out of my so why not?
Why not?
Yeah, why not? So all these skills I just immediately use and transcend into, and if I make cord and then like now I'm pulling the cord through knitting. It's all cloth and it's all thread. And I think what we should also start to look at is the history of how these skills and these cloths and all evolve. I learned from other cultures as well. When I look at the CD quilters who use fabric and sew one end of it to the others, I figured, wow, that's something I could do. When you're siloed with just small groups of people, that's what you're going to make. If your quilt friends are the type that need the quilt sandwich and if they do one type of quilt, that's what you're going to know and learn. I think what I love about living in New York is the exposure to art, museums, textile. Oh gosh, September is everything month here. In fact, it's textile month. And trying to get out my studio in order to see the sheer amount of fabrics and textiles and cultures, development. Sometimes I just want to stay in this little room and sit in the forest cave. But you have so much influence here that it's the word cultural appropriation is really strange to me because I think the whole world is one big cultural reference book. Because all we've been doing is solving problems. If you're in one end of the world and you need to keep your feet warm, and I'm somewhere else in the world and I need to keep my feet warm, but you have sheep and I have, Siberian and I have huskies, well, you're going to spin wool and I'm going to spin dog. And so,
Yeah.
we've all developed these skills. Oh, he's in the background. How you doing? He's gotten up out of bed.
Yeah.
And we've all learned these skills. Why not mix them? Why not, if you know how to spin and you want to look for, why not spin for embroidery and get your knitting friends to get your fiber friends to let's use some of the embroidery and let's see where this goes. If you like to rug hook, why not use yarn? And you don't have to use an expensive hook. You can, when women see me, that's for your hook is for crochet. I'm like, 200 years ago, you'd be using a bent nail.
Yeah.
It's a blessing to have.
I feel like you should add a third
tool.
question. You have, what if, why not? I feel like you should add, says who?
Oh, well, there you go. Says who? Oh, my goodness, yes. I mean, adaptation ensures survival, and it doesn't mean, it's not a zero-sum game. It's just like that, this is the situation I'm in. How can I use what I know and what I have to work in this particular situation? If I was living somewhere where there were no sheep, I'd be looking at everything with hair. And I did have a commission to spin Samoyed dog.
Ooh.
Therefore, a knitter who was given all this dog hair by some friends who showed their dog. And she was like, well, so how can you make anything? So, and I've got this dog hair, and I was like, oh. And Ravelry, I must say, has been a huge also community in my life, because I figure if there's a group of people out there, they're on Ravelry. And sure enough, the dog hair spinners were there, and they taught me how to remove the dog smell out of hair, because dogs have a wax at the base. Animals have like a little waxy base, and that's what gets the smell when it's damp. So by adding a little pinch of ammonia to the water when you're scouring, raises the chemical level of the water so that it removes the doggy smell. And I was left with this clean, beautiful dog hair that it looks like fake. It's like fake Angora.
Ooh. Fluffy, soft, yeah.
Fluffy, it's soft and fluffy. And I collect books, and I find that nothing's new. I have a book here called Putting on the Dog. And it was from a woman who spun dog hair like many, many years ago.
Yeah.
And so I look to newbies and say, the library is your friend. Go to thrift books. Look for old books. A lot of the techniques, and hand technologies, as I call them, that we're all going, oh, this is new. No, it's been a solved problem for people who, then I realized that everyone in the world doesn't have sheep.
Yeah.
Strangely enough, even though that's all we're spinning and knitting, saying, there's a hope, the plant world.
What's new, I think, is being able to get it all at the same time.
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you go on, but you have it all at your fingertips. But what worries me is that there are people who take 3 lessons and now they're on YouTube. And I'm finding the frustration with a lot of people who are new to crafts. Like they're like telling you can make a blanket, cast on these stitches, use these needles, and now they have these straight needles with hundreds of stitches bunched up, hurting their hands.
Right.
And when I asked them what happened, and they're like, "Oh, well, I was on YouTube," and I'm like, "Okay." My advice is look for authors of books to start. Because if you're not, if you're not going to pick up the book, look for the author. But they're all on YouTube as well. Your chances of getting a better outcome of learning, because it's usually to supplement the book, is the odds are better at learning.
Yeah. So with all of these projects going on, what are you really most excited about right now?
What I'm most excited about right now is the revelations that I have from the sweater I was working on with several different yarns in the same weight. The other revelation that I'm having that I'm really enjoying is, which is a departure from knitting, but is the use of embroidery and lace making techniques on yarn. And this is actually I have a lace making technique that uses needle and thread because once again, my mantra is do more with yarn.
Mm-hmm.
And so the concept of your own darn stash, personal sustainability, use all the skills that you have to use up the yarn that you have. If you are an embroiderer, embroider yarn.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's and I'm going to come out with kits and all, and multi-skill kits.
Mm-hmm. Great. And so I'll post information about where people can find you because that's exciting to learn about.
The number what people will be able to find me on outside of Instagram and all is my website because I'll be posting a lot of content there. And if I do have email that you can sign up for, and I will not bombard you. I know that everyone is having, stream off. I know everyone's getting too much email, but what I'm doing as opposed to a newsletter will be more of a monthly and quarterly guide where we'll just spill out everything I'm doing. But you can find me on my website. You can find me on Instagram, and I am open to email for questions. You can for questions and all. Also, I do have an online shop on my website.
Yeah.
And that shop has, this carries the trivets, carries blankets. I do have a space that I'm opening that will be like cheaper free. And it's a surprise every month. It may be stitch markers. It may be just all of the things I have here, books and all that I'm giving away. But I will say this, I am open more to teach. And that's what I enjoy doing. So if people are looking for individual lessons, I have taught online at what's called the Tatter Blue is the name of the organization of the library in New York. Oh, New York's filled with stuff. One of the major problems we all have here as crafters is distraction. Because there's just so many. You go to Eventbrite and it just blows up with all of these events that are all equally as fun as sitting home, streaming, and crafting. But no. You'll go to the events. You can go to all those events. But you know what? When you come back to your pillow that you can fall back on and one that you made, that lasts forever. So yes, I do teach, so people can reach me primarily through my website, and I answer my emails, so that's a good way to do it.
Great. Well, Sahara, thanks so much for your time. I've really enjoyed speaking with you, and
I hope I covered everything.
And I'm just excited almost to. All of the bins behind me are my stash, and so you've made me excited to go and dig into my stash and see what I can do with it.
Oh, wonderful! So tell me all the skills that you do.
So I usually say that what I mostly do is knit, but I am a spinner. You know how being a spinner, it can kind of like get into it. It changes how you see the whole world. So mostly I knit, and I do like to weave on my rigid heddle loom. And I do a little bit of dabbling here and there. I took, so Sarah Pedlow is somebody who also teaches at Tatter. And I actually went on a trip with her to do a particular kind of irashosh embroidery that was really fun. So, but I'm not very good at that one, but I try. So.
Okay, well, just, if you have a weaving lying around, paint on it. Or hook it. Use it as a ground. Your weavings can now become ground cloths.
Yeah. It's I was telling somebody recently that, I'm from this sort of, like if you weren't good at art class, I got the impression that you weren't good at art.
And that's a history of us all as women and craft workers.
Yeah.
We look at what we do as either another form of work.
Right.
We can be proud of what we did
Right.
and be creative, but it's still that is still in the domestic world, and it's not real creativity. So now I'm like, you know what? I'm trying to tell for this everyone who's listening for the year. Emerge from the silos, knit your spinning, spin your knitting. Take all those singles you have and card it up.
Yeah.
You know, what if, why not, and who says? Says who?
Says who? Says who?
Says me.
All right. I'm going to let you go, although I could talk to you all day long. This has really been fun.
Yes, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks to our sponsors for supporting the podcast. Thank you for listening to the Long Thread Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please rate the show and leave us a comment on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. Thanks again.